Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Julie McCrossin, and it's my enormous pleasure to welcome you to this Wolper Wellbeing Program webinar. And our topic tonight is using diet and exercise to promote health and well-being. And of course, we're hosted by Wolper Jewish Hospital and Friends of Wolper. And we like to begin by acknowledging that we're on Aboriginal land and to pay our respect to elders past and present and emerging elders. I'm broadcasting to you tonight on the land of the Kaurna people. I'm in Adelaide in South Australia. And of course, Wolper Jewish Hospital is on the land of the Gadigal people. And we're asked to give thought to the name of the country on which we stand. And our evening tonight will predominantly be in a panel discussion format with regular opportunities for questions and comments. And I'll tell you how you can do that in a moment. And our goal is one clear thing: to give you practical, evidence-based advice to improve your health and well-being. I can just hear another voice, so we might ask someone to pop themselves on mute. And I'd like to just give you some quick housekeeping. Remember, we cannot see or hear you at home. So the only way to ask questions is through the Q&A button. And you can have a look on the bottom if you're not used to it. The bottom right, you could just click on Q&A and you can type questions you've got there about health and well-being and the use of exercise and a good diet right now. You know, don't hesitate to put your questions throughout the whole evening. We ask you not to put your questions in chat because that's a way that we on the panel can communicate with each other, but we will have a look at chat as well. And of course, some of you are watching us on Facebook tonight, and we have a way of getting your questions as well. Our wonderful friend of Wolper, Dr. Alan Schell, a working general practitioner, is monitoring all the questions that come in, and I will come to him regularly through the night and he will share your questions with us. It's perfectly okay to ask an anonymous question if you prefer. Just a reminder, we're recording this evening. We are recording this, and our webinar will be available on the Wolper Jewish Hospital website. In the next couple of days, it'll be shown within the hospital to people receiving care there, and it will also be available on Facebook, so it's distributed widely. And after this evening, all attendees will receive an email, and we seek your feedback. We love to get your feedback, and many decisions are made on the basis of that. We've still got some people coming in, so I'll pass over now to the marvellous Dr. Alan Schell, as I said, a great friend of Wolper, who will open proceedings. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you to all our panellists, and thank you to our own Terry Meister for joining us here tonight. This is a very important subject. Much has been written, much will be told this evening. Wolper has been, for most of you will know, the wellness and wellbeing evenings for some 18 years, and we've become predominantly on Zoom, and we appreciate that many of you find this very convenient, and we will continue to do so. Wolper Hospital, while it is the premier facility in Sydney for those people having post-operative knee and hip rehabilitation and for other slow rehab and medical issues and very good palliative care, we also believe in doing good old preventive medicine, helping you stay healthy so you don't need to be in hospital. So we hope that, particularly on this subject tonight, that you're going to learn a lot, understand certainly a bit more than you maybe when you started, and hope that you stay in good health, particularly now that we're all having some very difficult times around Australia and around the world. So I'd like to say thank you to Julie, as always, for being our fantastic moderator, to our panellists, and I'll hand you back to Julie so our Q&A can begin. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. And everybody, this is how you clap. This is called deaf sign clapping. And I urge you, even though we can't see all of you, to enthusiastically respond throughout the evening, because in this time of lockdown for many of us, it is just so important to maintain the human connection. Look, just before I bring our panel on and we begin our discussions, we're going to do a quick poll. And the purpose of the poll is to hear a little bit about you, our audience, and also to introduce you to our panel. So I'll ask our man in cyberspace, Michael, to put up the first poll question, please. Walking. How often do you walk for 30 minutes or more? Rarely, twice a week, more than twice a week, daily? Could you please click the one that is best for you? And I'll ask Michael to put up the answers and we'll see what you've said. Rarely is 13%, twice a week, 22%, more than twice a week, 30%, daily, 35%. The second question, please. How often do you exercise intensely enough to pant or get out of breath? Never, once a week, more than once a week, daily. Your answers, please. Michael, let's have a look at our answers from our audience. Never is 29%, once a week, 27%, more than once a week, 36%, daily, 9%. Thank you. Our third question, please. Weight management, true or false? Exercise alone is good enough for managing my weight. True or false? The answer, please. True 1%, false 99%. Our next question, please. True or false? A multivitamin a day can make up for a poor diet. True or false? The answer, please. True 4%, false 96%. Our next question, please. True or false? Diet and exercise can reduce the effects of aging. True or false? Answer, please. True 93%, false 7%. Our next question. Strength exercises are optional. You can get the same health benefits from doing a lot of walking-based activities. True or false? Strength exercises are optional. You can get the same health benefits from doing a lot of walking-based activities. The answer, please. True 21%, false 79%. And that's on the question of whether strength exercises are optional or not. Our next question. True or false? Physical activity is good for our health at all ages. It's never too late to start increasing our activity. True or false? And the answer, please. True 99%, false 1%. Look, thank you so much, Michael. That's the end of our poll, and thank you everyone for participating. It's time now, yes, and this is the clapping to everybody who's done so. Could I invite now our panel to turn on their pictures so we can see you? And it's my great pleasure to welcome Professor Dafna Merom, Professor Emmanuel Stamatakis, who is well known as Manos, I beg your pardon, Professor Margaret Allman-Farinelli, and in a little bit of time, I'll be inviting Terry Maisler, the dietitian from Wolper, to join us. So everybody, if you could introduce yourselves in this manner. Manos, Professor Emmanuel Stamatakis, are you able to turn on your microphone, turn on your video, please. Oh, yes, there you are. You're in a different square.
I am on two different computers, one for the video and the other for the audio.
I thank you. And we thank you for this innovative and agile response to a technical challenge. Listen, I want to begin, if I may, I'm going to give you your full introductions, ladies and gentlemen, as I bring you in, because it's so hard to remember otherwise. I want to begin with Professor Emmanuel Stamatakis Manos, who's a professor of physical activity and population health at the University of Sydney, based at the Charles Perkins Centre, and also played a key role in the development of the World Health Organization guidelines on physical activity and sedentary behaviour. Manos, can I just ask you to begin by just giving us a definition of physical activity and exercise, because I think you feel a distinction right from the start there is useful.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, and good evening, everyone. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. I'm sorry, I still have problems. I have pop-ups, and I'm very sorry about the panic, the IT panic. I think we solved the problem. You must be.
No, don't worry. Our audience have no knowledge of this. They just see you as a charming professor with things to say about physical activity and exercise.
Excellent. So it is important to make a distinction between the two terms, physical activity and exercise, because although they are very closely related, they're not one and the same thing. And solutions on the problem of inactivity depends on the approach which you tackle exercise or physical activity. So in simple terms, physical activity is any movement. Physical activity is any functional movement, day-to-day movement, standing up, going to the shops, walking to work or walking, lifting our children, playing with children. This is physical activity. Now, exercise is a subset of physical activity and refers to that exercise, the physical activity that is done specifically for the purpose of health, appearance, fun. So going to the gym, going for a run, playing tennis, playing golf, all these are exercises. We have to make special arrangements. We have to commit some time. Physical activity is done as part of our day-to-day living.
And I guess the obvious next question is, for those who are seeking to improve their health and well-being, the focus of our discussions tonight, do you have to work on both?
It is not necessary. I would like to remind our audience that how we got to this point, how we got to the point where in Australia, for example, only 1 out of 6 adults are physically active. So 5 out of 6 adults are physically inactive. We didn't get to this point because humanity decided to stop using gyms or stop playing tennis. We got to this point because we engineered, our civilization, our society has engineered physical activity from daily living, day-to-day living. We don't need to, very few of us do manual jobs. Those who do manual jobs, automation has come into play. We use cars too much. We rely on cars for everything. We build an environment that caters the needs of cars, not humans really. I guess I'm sure that the drivers, the needs of the drivers are also met. But so considering what the root of the problem is, and the root of the problem is that we engineered out physical activity. It's very hard to try and find a solution, solve the actual problem of physical inactivity through exercise. And the proof of that is not going to be easy, or it's not going to be possible really to solve the problem through exercise, is that if you look at statistics in Australia, for example, we see that it is exactly 15 to 20% in the last 30 years has been 15 to 20%. This is the percentage of the population who do exercise. So 80%, they hardly ever or never do exercise. So the solution to the problem of physical inactivity is to find a way to re-engineer back activity into our daily living.
Now, I'm going to come in because I have to keep moving. And so when I ask the question, do you need both physical activity and exercise, following your definitions, is what I'm hearing from you is, because people have asked for practical, direct messages, that your message is we need to move in daily life. We need to take every opportunity we have to move in daily life. Is that your key message tonight?
We can modify our daily life to receive most of the benefits we would receive from exercise. Exercise, the advantage of exercise is that usually comes with a higher intensity. Higher intensity, I noticed in the poll that only about 10% of people huff and puff on a daily basis. That's a little worrying for me. High intensity comes with unique benefits and causes all these adaptations, physiological adaptations that prevent disease, reduce risk for disease, improve our functional capacity, and make us live longer. So in a way, we do need both, but if we reimagine and redesign our daily living, we do not necessarily need exercise.
I'm going to ask you one more question and then introduce another person, and welcome to our audience. People are still joining us. My name's Julie McCrossin. We're discussing the value of exercise and nutrition or diet in promoting our health and well-being, and also the capacity to perhaps prevent or to manage health conditions. And we will be dealing initially with exercise. I'll then go to nutrition. I'll then go to exercise, and I'll then go to nutrition again. And please put your questions in the Q&A right now, because we'll be going to questions regularly during the evening. My understanding is, Manos, that you believe we need to get out of breath every day. And by that, you're not talking about people with illnesses that get them out of breath. You mean we all need to have a pant. So why is that so? And examples of what you think our audience tonight, who are mainly in an older, over 50 age group, sort of things we need to do to pant. Very specific, please.
People who do a lot of exercise, people who go to the gym, people who play squash, play tennis, and they receive quite substantial doses of higher vigorous physical activity through exercise, they are okay, I would say. Now, the majority of the population, as we mentioned before, they don't. And I think our audience is a living example in a way. The majority of the people, they don't have the opportunities to be able to get out of breath. Now, I will go back to the same. The reason why we need to huff and puff on a daily basis is that this is what our bodies understand as a stimulus, as a reason to improve, function better, be prepared for the next time that the need for to huff and puff will appear. And these are the changes, and these are the physiological adaptations that prevent disease and improve people's functional capacity. So the reason why is that it's a practical reason, really, as well as a medical, physiological reason. The
and
practical reason is that people
Manos, of course, if you're thinking you want to follow Manos's guidance and huff and puff, make sure you talk to your general practitioner first for safety reasons, but just be specific and concise, Manos. What are things that older people can do to huff and puff after they check with their GP? It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Be specific.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anything, I think that one of the best examples is using stairs instead of lifts. To the pace that is comfortable, holding the rail. Well, of course, safety comes first. There is no question about that. Carrying shopping for 500 meters, carrying 5 kilograms of shopping will raise the heart rate for about 3, 4, 5 minutes. So that's a significant amount of physical activity in a way, considering that the guidelines, the WHO, the World Health Organization's recommendations, the need is for 23 minutes per day, 23, 24 minutes per day of moderate to vigorous physical activity. Now, let's not forget that in terms, and this is very consistently shown by epidemiology, the kind of work we are doing, that the health value of 1 minute of huff and puff physical activity equals 2 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 10 minutes of light intensity activity, just like ambulating, moving around. So there is a very good efficiency argument there, I think we can make, with huffing and puffing and higher intensity physical activity that people will build into their daily living.
Look, thank you so much for kicking us off, Manus. I have an almost overwhelming desire to jog while talking during this, but unfortunately, the huff and puff may make me harder to listen to. I'd like to welcome now Professor Dafna Merom, who's a professor of physical activity and health at the School of Health Sciences at the University of Western Sydney, and also formerly a senior epidemiologist at the Israeli Centre for Disease Control. So welcome to Dafna, and we could do some clapping to welcome you. Dafna, first of all, a response to what you've just heard, the huffing and puffing, your thoughts on that?
Basically, most of the things that Manu said, I agree with. I just want to say that exercise in a definition has an intention to improve some dimension of fitness. And if we would like to actually slow down the aging process and to gain 10 years over the chronological age, to be ahead 10 years in time, we will need to exercise. It means that we will need not only to enjoy from the activity, but to get the improvement in the dimension of fitness that we have, whether it's cardiorespiratory, whether it is strength muscle, whether it is balance and coordination, our core muscle. This will need an exercise. So there is a good saying from a very from a professor that I know, that she says, exercise comes with age. The older we get, the more exercise we need to do. So I do agree that you can puff and pant, like in this lockdown, for example, I cannot go to the gym. So what I do, I choose a trail that have uphill, and I try to keep the same pace that I go on level of even on the uphill, and I puff and pant. That's how I can mimic my training in the gym, for example, on a incline walker. But I'm just saying that if you introduce engineering into your life, a climbing stair, carrying baskets, going every day out and about, put your car away as much as you can, break hours of sitting, and use your environment like sandy beach, uphill, downhill. These are the things that can bring you into an exercise mode, because it will stimulate your body, and you will see an improvement.
I just want to follow up on a couple of things you said there, because it goes to the poll questions. You indicated that you can gain 10 years of life compared to your chronological age. So you're 70 by your birthday, but you really got the body of a 60-year-old. Is that right?
I wish I could show my mother-in-law, for example. She's 95 years old and looks like 70. But what I said, I meant for people who are lifelong active people. So it can come out of the blue. It is something that is required, a lifestyle. And that's what I mean. A person that his lifestyle has been active from early adulthood through middle age and keep it on all the people, he's definitely going to, I'm not saying look like, but his body and body system will be 10 years younger.
Okay. And you believe it is never too late to start. So what if you're one of those people who has not been active and you're now 70 and looking down the barrel of perhaps the sort of illnesses that come often later in life, is there still merit in beginning then?
Absolutely, absolutely, because we know that, let's say at age 70, we expect to have some kind of chronic condition. We are very lucky if we don't have, but we know that exercise can manage chronic condition. Exercise has so many benefits in preventing, in postponing the disease onset, but also once you have it, in managing the disease. So at any age, you can also improve the condition you are at. So if you never been an active person and you decide to start, you still need to be it carefully and gradually, but over 3 months, you will see an improvement. The improvement would at least maintain the gains that you have at that age. And if you continue, it will slow down some of the aging mechanism that we know when you are 70, which is quite rapidly.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'll come to Alan with some questions from the audience. But this question of how do I start? Perhaps in your younger years, if you have been an active person, you may be able to pick up on knowledge you've had before. But what if you haven't? Under what circumstances should you receive professional help to tailor exercise and get advice to your particular needs?
Absolutely. I think if you are an inactive person, you certainly need to have some consultation or advice from professional at start. As a person who, and I could see that at least 40% is rarely doing walking or once a week, which is not enough, really not enough. So to really mean, if you really want to improve your condition, and so you can start with the easy, accessible walking because it's functional activity and it bears no harms if you are steady and you have place to sit. Yes, walking out and about every day, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that's a good start. But if you want later and leave the car, try to do your errands on foot, etc. Be active daily. But if you want to really build the systems, the cardiorespiratory system, and you are inactive person, sedentary person, it'd be good to have the first consultation either with exercise physiologist or to look at some online materials, etc. before. And after that, you can do it. And people that used to exercise, I think they can get the access to YouTube, to anything that they can find available to start, because they have the knowledge and the habit in their body already. They know they need to start slow, etc.
Look, thank you so much. And if you've just joined us, I'm talking to Professor Dafna Merom, who is a professor of physical activity and health at the University of Western Sydney. We've also heard from Professor Emmanuel Stamatakis, or Manos, and we will hear again from both of them. And Manos is a professor of physical activity and population health at the University of Sydney. I'd now like to welcome our question monitor, Dr. Alan Schell, who's monitoring your questions. And welcome onto our screen, Alan. And if you could give us some questions, please. And just while Alan joins us, I will be turning to questions of nutrition and diet shortly. We'll be jumping between the two topics as the evening goes. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Dafna, and Efaristo Manos. It's very good that you've actually answered some of the questions. I think three good questions are, I'm a 70-plus person. I certainly have been doing, as Dafna says, regular exercise, watching what I eat, and people tell me I'm looking better at 70 than I did before, so that's great. Secondly, the good ones are, people get confused a bit with, should I do 10,000 steps a day? What should my heart rate be? Should it be 135, 160? What does that mean with panting? And the last one is, well, actually, she says, I'm turning 90. Will exercise harm me? So really it comes down to what's the amount. I know that people can break up their exercise to say 20 minutes, so maybe 10 minutes walking up the stairs, 10 minutes going shopping. But what would you feel, both of you, with regard to heart rate? Should we be getting our heart rate to, twice the normal? Should we be doing 10,000 steps a day? Is that reasonable? And what age should we start?
Look, thank you. What I'll do is come to each of you. Could I come to you, Manos, first, please? And as concisely as you can, your microphone needs to be on, sir.
Yes, you should be able to hear me now.
Yes, thank you.
So the dose of exercise, There is not a straight answer, and there's not a straight answer because it depends what is the baseline. Where do people start from? So if someone starts from no physical activity whatsoever, it's not 10,000 steps, it's not 70,000 steps. They need to start with 3,000 steps, for example. Now, if the question was about what is the ideal amount of physical activity, we're very fortunate because we have evidence-based guidelines that come from the World Health Organization based on tens of thousands of work in 2019 and 2020. And the amount that this very comprehensive review concluded that people should do is between 150 minutes and 300 minutes of moderate intensity activity, or between 75 minutes and 150 minutes of vigorous intensity activity. Would you like to define what moderate?
No. How often? You said the numbers, but you didn't say how often.
So this is per week. So these are total amounts per week. Now, in terms of
could I ask you to repeat that slowly, because people really want to hear that. So just slowly, what is the per week recommendation from the World Health Organization?
Between 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity, brisk walking, or between 150 and 300 minutes of moderate intensity activity, or between 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity activity, or a combination of the two that roughly bring the same amount. So if we were to translate that into steps, that would be approximately 7,000 steps a day, roughly, depending on the pace as well.
And could I ask you the question about if someone is 90, can starting exercise ever harm you? I know you're not a doctor, Manos, but your thoughts there.
It is the older someone starts, the more precautions that need to be in place, medical precautions and medical clearance. Now, there are examples of people, Dr. Charles Youngster, for example, a dentist in London who started at the age of 75, started lifting weights at the age of 75, and he became a master athlete, famous all over the world. He was running 200 meters till the week before he died at the age of 97. Of course, these are isolated examples, but I think the older someone starts, the more precautions have to be in place. I think it is common sense. I don't think that this is a scientific opinion necessarily, because we do not want to cause any adverse events. And yeah.
Thank you so much. Dafna, could I ask you to answer that question about the ideal level, the ideal pace, and advice if you're starting at 90 to cause no harm?
I think people who start at 90 just need to be aware not to have too strong motivation, because sometimes too strong motivation can really get them to an adverse event, such as falling, for example. And so I would agree completely with Emmanuel. We need to be, the older we start, we need to be more gradual in our beginning, more guided by a professional, and be aware that there is some limitation of age, that we are aware of them, such as our balance capacity, for example, our coordination, our reaction time, all these sensory neurological things, including multitasking. These things need to be into consideration. We can walk, but the pace that an older people would walk would be completely, can reach moderate intensity activity that for an adult would be very slow pace. So not to be highly motivated just to see these people that are younger than you and want to do like them. That's what I would like to put as a caution. Otherwise, Emmanuel really said, I totally agree.
But could I just ask, because it was in the poll, remember one of the polls was true or false, strength exercises are optional. You can get the same health benefits from doing a lot of walking-based activities. What's the truth about that and why?
Absolutely not. I mean, for years, we neglected this aspect. And again, I think that with age, we need to be more cautious or more aware that the strength exercise can bring us a lot of benefits, including cardiovascular benefits. And I can explain. When you increase the volume, the body muscle, the muscle volume of your body, you actually demand from your heart to work harder, to reach the periphery, to supply more oxygen and blood circulation for a greater masses of muscle. So already even in you are in rest, you actually demand more from your cardiovascular system, cardiorespiratory system, let alone when you are doing an effort. Now, the muscles, every body system are deteriorating with aging. And the rapidity that the muscles, our muscle strengths deteriorate is even faster than our cardiorespiratory system. So we need always to make sure that if we do our walking, we will do more strength. It's now in our recommendation, in the WHO recommendation, in Australian recommendation, that we shouldn't actually forget that we need to, it's all age, we need to strengthen muscles.
And just 2 or 3 examples of the sort of activity that strengthens muscles.
Well, I mean, for me, it's really progressive repetition resistance training that you can do it at your home against your, I can see people that use 2 buckets with water and use it like a weights training. You can buy those weights. You can use a rubber band. I do it every day. I do it almost every day because think about your posture. Think about your posture, about the muscles of your back, of the core muscle, of the hands and leg. And, just to let you know, there is a good test, which is hand grip strength. This is a predictor of mortality, of cardiovascular disease. And there is something into it. If we train our muscle, there is a lot of benefit coming to our cardiovascular, to our heart health, but also to our metabolic fitness, and certainly to our stability, functional ability. So I would wholeheartedly recommend don't neglect this aspect. And we as public health needs to emphasize it more and more because we used to emphasize only cardiorespiratory fitness.
Look, thank you so much. And a clap if I may. Can you clap too, Manos, because I can see you. And I will be coming back to physical exercise, I promise you. I noticed that Manos began earlier by referring to the fact that with modern life we had got rid of a lot of physical activity, and the thought that we're now buying buckets and walking around our yards with buckets of water when the poor women of Africa are doing that because they have to, is simply amazing. But look, just before I turn to diet, because I think we must do that, could I just, Michael, have the picture of my mother? Because we've talked about exercise being of value at all times. Michael, if you could pop up those pictures for me. And I just share this with you. On the left-hand side is a picture of my mother after having had a fall, and she's in a rehab hospital in the eastern suburbs and walking up and down the corridor repeatedly. My mother had 5 children. She never learnt to drive a car, and she was an extremely physically active person. And I always was deeply moved at how determined she was in hospital. The right-hand side, she's now being cared for with 24/7 care at home. My mother has passed now, but and I remember this day vividly with a physiotherapist and a carer, and they've got a belt around her and they're holding her, and she's determinedly moving up and down the corridor of her home in Bellevue Hill. And when Mum took to her bed and wasn't able to exercise, she still would wiggle her toes, do bed exercise. We haven't mentioned that, but no matter how old we are, we can keep moving. And Mum made it to 94. And if you knew her Her health history is so heavy, you could do weights and build your core strength just lifting mum's paper file at St. Vincent's, and yet she made it to 94. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome now to our screen, if you could get rid of the picture, Michael, I'd now like to welcome Professor Margaret Allman-Farinelli, who's a professor of dietetics at the University of Sydney, based at Charles Perkins Centre, and also is an active researcher in nutrition and chronic disease. So a welcome to Margaret. Margaret, is exercise enough to manage our weight and improve our health? What would you say to that?
No, it's definitely, we're both here tonight. It's definitely a combination of your nutrition and exercise or physical activity, whatever age you are. I guess one of the preoccupations currently is around people and the problem of overweight and obesity. But I want to say nutrition is so much more than just weight balance. As we get older, most of us do gain weight. It's not easy. It's not easy trying to manage your weight, but it's important to eat healthily. So I guess what I would like to say is that probably for each decade you age, it's likely that you're going to gain some weight, and to combat that, you're likely going to need to try and increase your exercise. But sorry, we're just having a few technical problems, but I don't think it's me. So it made me lose track a little, sorry. So yes, so just to come back, we need good nutrition and we need to exercise. It's the two in combination that will prevent unwanted weight gain and also help us prevent chronic disease.
Can I ask you, my understanding is you believe we need to build our diet and that fruit, vegetable and whole grain are the key. Your backdrop, of course, is absolutely marvelous. It makes me want to have a salad, eat a banana, and right as we speak. But for people who want to avoid fad diets and get a sustainable, health supportive diet, what are the critical messages you want to say? The 2 or 3 key things.
Okay, yes, again, build it around vegetables. Eat plenty of vegetables and fruit. Add in some legumes, for example.
What are legumes?
Yeah, legumes are simple foods like beans. So chickpeas, soybeans, pinto beans, also things like lentil, split peas, people might know those. These are foods which are inexpensive but packed with nutrition. And actually, if you want to do one thing from after this meeting to improve your diet, add in lentils a couple of times a week to your diet, packed with protein, good for the planet and good for your health. Then add in some whole grains. Whole grains are important as a source of thiamine and a source of fiber. And fiber is very important in diets trying to protect against diabetes, also helps control blood lipid levels, the blood fat levels, helps with our overall digestion, helps us grow healthy microbes. We get a good microbiome when we've got a diet rich in fruit, vegetables, add in your legumes and your whole grains. Then you need to add in small amounts of the protein-rich foods like our fish, meats, poultry, nuts. You can add that in, some amounts of dairy foods as well. We have a requirement for protein, but you do get protein from your cereals and from your vegetable foods as well. And in particular, as I've said, the legumes. So build your diet on that.
And I understand you believe you should not take vitamin supplements routinely. My understanding
Correct.
is this is a billion-dollar industry, so a lot of people aren't hearing that message. Why should you not take vitamin supplements routinely?
Well, the reason for that is, A, you should be able to get the nutrients that you need from eating a healthy diet. Secondly, If you start to take one vitamin or mineral in excess, it might interfere with the absorption and levels of another. But the other reason is you might be wasting money and it ends up in your bathroom each day if you already have sufficient water-soluble vitamins. But I do want to say that perhaps some of you in the audience tonight are cancer survivors. And the World Cancer Research Foundation's message to you, if you are a cancer survivor, is not to take any supplements unless you discuss that with a health professional. You should seek advice from a nutrition health professional or your doctor. And that's because there's evidence to show that it could actually be pro-carcinogenic. So vitamin A, beta-carotene, vitamin E, they've actually been shown to promote some cancers. So don't take vitamin supplements unless you're speaking to your doctor. Like pregnant women, they need FeFol, they need folic acid. It might be that you need calcium and vitamin D if you're deficient. But talk to the health professional, not getting your advice from advertisements and marketing. But people like to do good things for their health, and that's probably why they're taking the vitamins. They say, I want to be healthy, I'm on a health kick, let's take them. But the advice is no.
I'm going to speak shortly to Terry Maisler, who's a clinical dietitian at Wolper Jewish Hospital, and she will raise some issues, including the fact that some people are too thin. And so I say that because I want to talk about weight loss while acknowledging it's not always the issue. But as we know, weight loss can be important for all manner of health conditions. And you've already mentioned it can be very hard. And so I guess I've got two questions. Is when should you consult with a dietitian and get help? And what do we know about the key steps for successful weight loss? Either because you might know you're on the cusp of diabetes, for example, or you've crossed over into diabetes, or you've had a cardiovascular event and weight loss, is urgently required. So for those for whom it really matters, when do you get professional help and what are the key steps?
I think that losing weight is hard. And if you've got a chronic disease or you know that you've got a predisposition that you're likely to get heart disease or to get diabetes, then you should try and keep in the healthy weight range, which is a body mass index of 25 or less. So if you're a person who's been trying to lose weight, as many have, and you've lost all the weight and then the weight comes back, I think you need to have someone help you. Don't try and do it alone. Go and see a dietitian. I'm one, so maybe I'm advertising them. You can get a chronic disease plan if you've got a chronic disease from your doctor to see one on Medicare. But if it's weight loss, look, join a group like Weight Watchers, for example. They're quite successful. They have dietitians behind it, good advice. So get help. Don't do it alone. Also get support from your family. That's really important. You need to have a diet that you can enjoy. A dietitian will take a complete diet history to find out what you do and don't like, what's happened with your weight. Make the diet on foods you enjoy and a pattern that you can sustain. No point with fad diets if you're not going to be able to keep with them or they're not giving you all the nutrients you need. What we'll do with you is we'll set realistic, achievable goals over a time period. So a goal for your eating change, a goal for your exercise, a goal for your weight. So we'll set the goals, and the goals will be set with you, not just by a health professional saying, do that. You have to work it out together. Then we'll help you get an action plan so that you can start to achieve your goals. I always suggest that people do what I call self-monitoring. So it can be weighing on a regular basis, but it also can be taking to a Fitbit to monitor your steps. And also perhaps you could use an app to monitor what you're eating, because sometimes you're eating mindlessly and you don't know what you're eating. So the evidence, the epidemiological evidence of changing behaviors shows if you have goals, if you monitor, and if you get feedback, that you're more likely to achieve your goals of changing diet and the weight coming down.
Look, thank you so much. I'd like to, and I'll do my clapping if I may, and I'd like to bring in Terry Meister, my apologies for the mispronunciation, the clinical dietitian at Wolper Jewish Hospital, get some remarks, and then we might go to questions on diet, and I'll bring you back in, Margaret, if I may. So welcome to Terry Meister, and I want to talk to you about well, first of all, if you could just tell us what your job is at Wolper Jewish Hospital. Give us a sense of what you do, please.
Sure. So, yeah, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Basically, my job at Wolper is to look at the clinical needs of all the patients that come in, and particularly their nutrition needs, and then to actually look beyond the immediate diagnosis and see how it can at all impact their ongoing health and well-being through nutrition. So it's really looking at everyone very individually, tailoring the advice based on all those things that Margaret was addressing, based on a thorough nutrition assessment, including going through, gathering all the data, including biochemistry, blood tests, the past medical history. We've seen many of the long ones that you were suggesting that your mum might have had, and just really breaking it all down and making sure that we're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together so that we're really best setting up all of our patients and their health outcomes for the future.
Look, we had a quick conversation this afternoon, and some key things stuck in my mind. And one of them was that you believe that the people that you work with need to follow health advice from professionals in the field that is professionally recognised in relation to diet, and also people who know you. Why is that tailoring of the individual and listening to the professional so important?
Look, I think in this day and age with social media and everything else happening, I think it's really sorry, I lost my train of thought. Everyone's become a health professional. So everyone has an opinion, everyone has advice, and it's really tricky to know where to get it from and who's giving the right advice, and is it accurate, and is it evidence-based, and is it actually going to help? And to go even further than that, I mean, it can't be a one size fits all. Everyone has lots of social complexities. They have different comorbidities, different chronic diseases, especially as you're getting older, that really come together to, it would change the recommendations that we're giving to each one of our patients. So, I think it is really important that you know the person that's giving you health advice, and to find someone that you trust with that advice. I think you can look on social media, and anyone can give you, any advice from anywhere. But at the end of the day, if it's not evidence-based, then it's founded on nothing, and it might actually be doing more harm than good. For example, the supplements that Margaret was.
Look, yes, they are the supplements that referred to. Yes, I was just thinking, our topic tonight is using diet and exercise to promote good health and well-being. Can we prevent, reverse, or avert progression? So we've really put ourselves very much firmly into a multidisciplinary health context. So this isn't about necessarily physical appearance or social pressure. This is specifically about health. And therefore, we go to qualified health practitioners about everything else. We need to do so for diet. Is that the core message?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is really important that we're bringing ourselves back to the real reason why, what is going to change our health outcome. And those needs change throughout the whole of your lifespan, and they also change throughout different medical conditions. And that's what's so unique about Wolper as well, is that we really do all work together. So we know when to refer on, when it's not within our scope anymore, and when to find someone else to do that. And I really genuinely feel like we all complement each other that way. But yeah, I think with the nature of health is that, you know, something that might be suitable for you at, you know, one time in your life, as things change, the advice needs to change with it. And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed, you know, across the whole, you know, and to the audience watching. You know, something that might be suitable to someone might not be suitable to another person watching.
What I might do is read the other key messages I got from you, and then ask you just for a couple of examples of a classic sort of person you work with at Wolper and how you approach it. And you may wish to address the issue of underweight as well as overweight, because for older people that can be important. But you said it's important to build good condition through weight-bearing activity and the appropriate diet. And that it's important to ask for help and to speak up and get advice on nutrition to address your particular health needs. So you really want to encourage people to speak up. And then this very interesting issue of prioritizing and changing key habits. Could you give us an example perhaps of a couple of clients you've worked with, anonymity of course, to give us a sense of how you put that into practice?
Sure. I mean, just the first thing that pops into my head is that the population that we're addressing at Wolper are people that do have comorbidities and are acutely unwell. So the advice, although is very much so health promotion, and we're really trying to achieve those health outcomes, we also, as I said in that last key message, is prioritizing what is the most important thing here. So just to bring me back to the first one. So I guess, sorry, I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. So building good condition and making sure that you've got that foundation, because as you get older, the health advice really changes. A healthy weight shifts up. So a healthy weight range, or a BMI, which is body to height and weight ratio kind of thing, basically goes from a healthy weight range between 22 to 25 BMI to somewhere between 23, 24 to something like 28. So it really does shift up, and then which means that you have a bit of buffer. So if you are, you know, more susceptible to falls and fractures, you've got a bit of room, because malnutrition is such a huge thing in hospitals. So really trying to address those health problems. So I too often see patients that come in and, you know, halfway through their referral or through their admission, I'll get a referral to see them, and they've had all these issues, and they've had kilos and kilos, 10 kilos, or, you know, excess of 14% weight loss of their body weight in such a short amount of time. Or they've got symptoms like swallowing issues or loose bowels or anything like that. But because they're not, they don't have the empowerment to seek advice, or they don't know who to go to, it really can be tricky to, you know, identify the problem and then solve it. But these are issues that can be addressed and they can be helped. And, you know, that's our job, is to put all these pieces together so that we can, you know, get the best outcome for the patient.
Look, thank you so much, Terry. What I might do now is ask Alan to come in with some questions, and we'll come to Margaret and yourself for some dietary questions, and to let our audience know too, we will return more to exercise as well. Alan Shell, could I welcome you back with questions, please?
Thank you, Julie. On a personal basis, and answering one of the points that Margaret raised, the CSIRO, our very good CSIRO, has had a very high success rate in people doing their balanced diets program, which includes exercise, including myself. So I think that if people are au fait and are able to handle an app, and not everybody can do that, there's a very good feedback of what sort of diet suits you, how you can mix your diet, but mix it up with exercise on a daily basis. And I can tell you that one feels a lot better. With that, a couple of people have certainly asked very good questions. And I think part of that's from what Margaret raised, the issues around protein. how much protein should we be having a day? Because there is a big fad for the low carb diet and the paleo diets and the keto diets, which all have a sort of a strange distortion of protein. And for those people who are vegans, of course, which protein should they? Lentils certainly, but a lot of people find them a bit upsetting. So that's one thing. I think the second one is on intermittent fasting. Now, Michael Mosley, who's been promoting BBC Good Health, there's been this 5 and 2 diets. There's the intermittent fasting diet. So again, that's confusing for the audience, for ourselves, what's good. And finally, I guess, is we did talk about BMI, thank you, Terry, but the issue is it amount of fat we have, or is it the body mass index that's important? Because we're all different shapes and sizes and fat distribution, and particularly women to men. So I think there are 3 things there we could talk about. How much protein? Is it intermittent fasting or those funny odd diets that people like to follow? And certainly, should we be having a sort of the BMI versus fat, which is the true thing to follow?
I might come to Margaret first. Thank you, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
Your thought.
Yes, well, just to start with the BMI, what Alan says is exactly correct. It is about body fat, and the BMI is a measure that closely approximates the amount of fat, but other measures like measuring around the waist and seeing, we know that abdominal fat is the one that's bad for you and leads to those chronic diseases like the diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So, the old Australian beer belly and the idea of needing gut busting is definitely true. The other thing too that I think Terry is referring to and seen some of is you can get somebody who's actually losing all their muscles but still has a high weight because they've still got the body fat, and particularly in older people in sort of rehab, that has to be considered. So it is about the body composition rather than weight per se. So that's about weight. Now, the idea about the 5-2, the idea about intermittent fasting, all of those are areas of intense interest. That people have successfully lost weight on the 5-2, and people have found that they can keep to that diet. So if they can keep to it and lose weight, but at this point in time, the research is tending to show that it's actually not being more successful than keeping to like a calorie energy restricted diet every day. So often with what it's about is what you can keep to and what you can keep to long term. So there's different ways of achieving the energy deficit. Now, an area of really intense interest is this fasting, and also the idea of people eating their food over a very restricted period of time. So maybe they only consume food over 6 hours in the day instead of all day like we do. So actually at the Charles Perkins Centre, that's being investigated by Professor Luigi Fontana, who was one of the first people to come up with the 5-2, and they're actually looking in cardiometabolic and cancer patients because of the effects that maybe eating for shorter periods of time may be very beneficial. My advice is you need to talk to your health professional before you do anything out of the ordinary though. So don't go putting yourself on intermittent fasting without seeking advice. I don't think people should be running off and doing that themselves unsupervised. One risk even is they might become dehydrated. Now, protein's an interesting nutrient. We know that the body has a certain requirement, but apart from some elderly people that Terry might tell you about, the average Australian is getting enough protein. So protein deficiency is not our problem. We know protein is controlled. The body has mechanisms of controlling the appetite for protein very closely. And that's the one nutrient where you'll find people, if you look at their diet, it ends up being consistent. protein, whereas the fat and the carbohydrate can go all over the place. So there is a control mechanism. It is essential amino acids, and somehow our body knows that. So protein deficiency in the diet is not a problem here. We can get all the protein we need from plant-based diets, and I'm not meaning you have to have artificial hamburgers. So it's not a problem. And in older people, excessive protein, in fact, is not recommended, except for the people who Terry sees who are sarcopenic and are not having the protein requirement.
Could I just ask you for a quick view on the role of meat in the diet?
Meat is not essential, but meat is a good source of amino acids, essential amino acids. We've got two types. The protein-rich flesh foods are rich in the essential amino acids. That means we have to get them in the diet. The body can't make them. So meat doesn't have to be in your diet, but it is a good source of iron and zinc as well. And sometimes, especially young women, for example, could be low in those. But if you don't want to eat red meat, that's not a problem. If you want to be vegetarian, take more care. You can do that. If you want to have fish in your diet, if you want to have poultry, you want to have nuts, you want to have legumes. But that's my view. I'm not anti-meat, but if you don't choose not to eat meat, you're not going to end up in nutritional deficiency. You can get your iron and zinc if you're careful. You might like to talk to a health professional like a dietitian just about your diet if you're decided to go vegetarian.
Look, thank you. Terry, can I come to you? Is there any comment you'd like to make, I guess, particularly with the patients that you're seeing, generally, I think, in the older age bracket at Wolper?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the requirements do change as you get older, but just to make a comment on that as well, is that nutrition is a relatively new science. So definitely advice continues to be updated as we go. Now, it just means that we're building on it. And I think that in terms of looking at a diet as a whole, that Mediterranean style diet is always going to be your best bet. So when you're looking at intermittent fasting and things like that are really deviating from that kind of style, when you're looking at cutting out whole food groups, you're going to be missing out on essential nutrients when that happens. Now, there is definitely more evidence that's coming up showing the benefits of some of those diets, but it's too early to make a really good conclusion of what the real benefit is. So yeah, as Margaret was saying, definitely seeking really individualized advice about that. In terms of the protein requirements, now most of the patients that I see are recovering from wounds or surgery, or are sarcopenic or have cachexia or anything like that.
Explain those last two terms, please.
Sure.
Sarcopenia, cachexia, yeah.
Sure. So sarcopenia is basically a chronic malnutrition and muscle wasting when you get older in life. So it really is a determinant of mortality and morbidity as you get older. It reduces quality of life and really reduces your independence. And cachexia is pretty similar. However, it's usually related to an increased metabolic requirement. So you've got increased requirements because you have a diagnosis of cancer or So when you get to that point, your energy and protein requirements significantly jump up. So you now go from needing about 0.75 to 1, depending on what your goals are, grams of protein per kilo, to much higher, about 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilo. So, yep.
Thank you. I'm very mindful of the time, and I want to, if I may, I want to ask something quickly of both Dafna and Manos, and then Alan, I'll see if we can have one more question. But thank you so much to our dietary team. And I've enjoyed Margaret in particular because on my computer, you slightly look like you're being eaten by your fruit. So it's the revenge of the fruit and vegetables. But could I come to Professor Emmanuel Stamatakis, or Manos, because I want to just come back to the exercise question of balance, because one of the reasons we can come into Wolper and develop difficulties is that we have a fall. And what are the key messages about falls prevention and the exercise that helps? Manos, please.
Thank you. Again, we are very well covered by the WHO's very recent global recommendations, because there is a specific recommendation for older adults, addressed specifically to older adults. It's about taking part in what we call multi-component exercise, functional exercise that promotes balance, strength concurrently at the same time, on at least 3 times per week. So balance is crucial, and the WHO's background thinking was to a large extent about falls prevention. We all know the consequences and the compromise in quality of life. Sometimes falls can generate an avalanche of poor health for older people in particular. So yeah, there is a specific instruction about multi-component exercise, and one of those aspects of the multi-component is specifically balance.
And just briefly, specific types of activity that help you with the balance?
Standing on one foot while waiting for the kettle to boil. Going back to my more incidental everyday physical activity. It's not so while talking about multi-component exercise, I use the term exercise specifically. So it is a good idea to get advice by an exercise physiologist or another accredited health professionals. We should not forget that in Australia is unique. Exercise physiologists are unique to Australia as a profession. They are very well trained, very literate about supporting health behavior change in the long term, which is the goal. As Margaret said, we're not keen on fads, we're not keen on quick fixes, we're not keen on shortcuts. Behavior change is a long thing, it's a long-term thing, and exercise physiologists are very well equipped to support older people to execute this recommendation of 3 multi-component exercise sessions per week. In a safe environment, in a safe way.
Thank you, Madison. Just a very quick comment. This idea that exercise brings life to years, we tend to focus on it a bit like it's a medication at the pharmacy, but the reality is if we engage in exercise, we feel good today, don't we?
Exactly. It's adding years. In a way, it's adding more years to life than life to years. So if we look at epidemiological studies that looked at life expectancy in relation to exercise levels, for example, the gain is kind of modest. 1 year, 2 years, exercises versus non-exercises, or physically active people versus non-physically inactive people. The gain is quite modest, but what we see is that physical activity, physically active lifestyle, defers or prevents a disease. Therefore, it's more likely that people will live an independent life for longer. Nobody wants necessarily to end up in a care home, although many of us will end up in a care home, no matter what we do. At some point, there is a joke in epidemiology saying that the mortality rate of any intervention is 100%. Because we cannot simply avoid, we cannot prevent the inevitable.
Look, thank you so much. And we now have had insight into the humour of epidemiologists, which of course is so important. But could I come to Professor Dafna Merom? Because this question of sustainability has come up repeatedly, hasn't it? Whether it's about what we eat or what our movement is. And I think that you feel that finding joy and doing activities with others are very helpful in achieving sustainability. Could you speak to that and make any other comment you wish to make? Are you there, Dafna?
I will go with this thing that Terry mentioned. There is no one size fits all. And I can tell you that the population that you mentioned, men and women are not alike in terms of choice of exercise. And also some people like individually to exercise. Some people like more the social context. Like, for example, generally women would like to have the social context. Men would like the gadget with them. Yes, so there are different gender difference and also individual difference. So it's hard to generalize. But from the literature, when we look at correlates of maintenance and sustainable active lifestyle, we can see that people who enjoy, who choose an activity that they enjoy to do, and it's completely different from individual to individual, they are more likely to engage in these activities. We also need to be mindful on what is accessible to us. So that's something that relates also to policy, to our local government area, and to advocacy and pressure from the community to have accessible accessible class at low cost, because cost is a problem. Now, health issues were the problem, but ironically, the sense of fatigue, the sense of pain can be overcome by regular physical activity and exercise, basically. So I would say that against those amotivation, there is amotivation things and objective feeling of being fatigued and painful. We need to do something in order to overcome those barriers. And one of the things is to choose some form of exercise that you enjoy, that you feel that your body enjoy doing it. It's not just the mental enjoyment, but it's really that it feels good in your body. And then to look at what support I can get in order to stick to the goal. What Margaret, it's the same with nutrition. We need to stick to goal. We need to monitor our things. We get reward from the fact that we see, oh, 3 months ago, I couldn't climb this hill and now I do it easily. So, at the start, when you are in adoption process, don't be discouraged and don't relapse. Try to stick it to the time when you feel, oh, it's really easy. It's really give me the pleasure that people talk about, and I never thought it will. So, be patient with yourself. Pick up the program that you enjoy it. If you need to support, have somebody to keep you company or to cue you. You need to do that. And be patient, wait until you get this kind of click from the exercise. And people who did it know that it will come. It's only because the new adopters and the people who didn't do it needs to be patient and to start with things that are light, that they like, etc. And let me tell you with the thing about falls that you talk, I just want to add that at the moment, there is balance training that you can really download, and functional activity you can download from the YouTube, even the most prestigious, efficacious exercise that you can do. But we are now also researching the type of activities that will be optimal for this multidimensional activity. And we know that Tai Chi can help with this. There are now studies that my colleagues involve about yoga and Pilates. I did study on dance. The results is still equivocal. So we are getting there. We are in our, what type of activity is optimal is just in the beginning. We start to begin these things, but there are certainly types of activities that will also answer falls and balance.
Thank you so much. Could I come back to Alan Schell? I know we're very close to finishing, Alan, but is there any question that you think is so pertinent we just get a quick answer from one of our panel, please?
The first is a comment that is at Wolper Hospital, and there were some people asked the question, runs a Move Well program. We teach people Tai Chi And we know from my working and others in local community services, and unfortunately until the lockdown, there were a lot of group classes that would support what Dafna is saying here and what Manos is saying, that having group activities or one-on-one activities unfortunately been put on hold for the moment, but that will happen. We'll come out of that and we'll be able to get back to group exercise. I think the one big one was issues around are fish oils good for you? And when you're getting older, do I still need to take calcium and vitamin D? And perhaps for Margaret, you know, there's a big thing about, there's a lot of ads for krill and fish oils, but sadly, as a medico, we know that if you're on some aspirins, that can actually make it a lot worse. So there is all this information that, you know, you've got to keep healthy bones, take your calcium and vitamin D and your fish oils. Is that a good thing?
Thank you so much. Margaret, just a quick final comment from you, please.
I think nothing's better than salmon. So you mightn't get the same physiological dose, but I think salmon's more enjoyable than taking the krill, etc. And check with your medico if you are vitamin D deficient and need a vitamin D supplement. Maybe some older people, they don't get much sunlight. So I suggest you ask your doctor about the vitamin D and whether or not to take the calcium.
Look, thank you so much. Just before I hand back to Alan, I did show pictures of my mum earlier, who's been a tremendous inspiration to me. And for those of us who are seriously older or perhaps caring for older parents, but getting older, that capacity to still be able to stand, get out of your bed, and as they say, transfer to the commode beside the bed. I'm getting really nitty-gritty here. But the difference between being able to stay at home with some support and go into a nursing home can often depend on that capacity to stand up on your bed, turn and sit on a commode. I can see Margaret's nodding. And it's not something you hear people talk about very much, but I watched my mother, you know, really work to maintain that capacity. And I think the fact that throughout her life she'd taken exercise seriously was helpful. The other thing I'll just quickly say is that my mum had a diagnosis of diabetes, which she managed through diet. And I've just had my diagnosis. I hope to emulate her. I'll keep Wolper abreast of developments. But I hope you all agree, ladies and gentlemen, that's been a most thoughtful and helpful session. And I'll hand back now to Alan to close proceedings. Thank you.
Yes, so again, thank you to our panelists, to Dafna, Margaret and Manos. Faristopoli, toda rabah, muchas gracias, or whatever language you like to speak out there. Yes, and I'd just remind people that we do have a post-webinar email. We'd ask you to fill it in, please. Let us know your feedback. We do like to improve things if we can. It is recorded, and as we always do, it's available next week on our Wolper Hospital website. Our next program, which you're all waiting for, is on Wednesday, the 1st of September, talking about the difficult time building resilience in our teen ages during this pandemic, practical strategies for parents and grandparents to assist us in these uncertain times. And it's very difficult for all of us. So on behalf of Wolper Hospital, I'd like to say thank you to all of you, from our President Richard Glass. Thank you for being with us tonight. We certainly had a large number of people, and we certainly learned lots. And take the advice, see a very competent health professional and listen and decide what's good for you. And that will conclude our webinar. Thank you very much to our very good moderator, Julie, and to Terry, our representative from the Wolper. Fantastic. And I wish you all a good evening. Really stay safe, stay well, and try and exercise as much as you can within a limited zone of your area. Bye now, and good night.